I was in Arizona. I was in the Grand Canyon Caverns, and we were taking this tour through the caverns, and I turned around. I was in the back of the group. Me and my mom, we were in the back of the group, and I turned around, and there was this little girl following us, and she looked so real to me that I actually I asked the tour guide, hey, I believe we're leaving somebody behind, because she was much farther back behind us and everything. And the tour guide informed me that there was no girl on our trip and that I was the youngest person that was on the tour. I was probably 16. Yeah, that was probably about 2 years ago or so. So I was probably 16. When that happened, that same trip, we were in the same cavern. We were in a different area of it, and I started getting sick. I felt dizzy. Felt like I was going to pass out. I laid down. When I did, my mom got touched by something. She doesn't know what it was, but it reached out. She could feel its almost, I don't know, presence, maybe, reach out and touch her. But that was I would say that's probably my most recent encounter with a ghost or spirit. My most recent encounter with anything of that nature was a crawler. I guess it was a crawler. And it was probably about 3 months ago. I was running. I used to be a big athlete. I was running, and it was at this industrial park is where I like to run. And I had my car parked on the edge of a dirt road that led off of one of the main roads. And down this dirt road, it's probably about 300 yards, and then it curves and goes down a hill, right? So there's a 300-yard stretch that you can see, and then the road curves. And so I was running back to my car as the sun was rising. I was running before school. And as I did that, as I was coming up and around this corner, and I topped the hill, I could see my car. Now, the sun was just barely coming up, and I posted this story, and it was in r/Skinwalkers, asking, what it could have been, and everyone told me it was a crawler and that I should post it in r/Crawlers, but I never did. But when I first came around the corner and I could see my car off in the distance, it looked like there was somebody standing beside my car. And in the passenger seat of my car is facing me, they're standing on the passenger side. And seeing them standing beside my car like that, my first thought process was, they're going to try and break into my car. My wallet was laying in the passenger seat. And so I take off into a dead sprint. And I get about 150 yards or so. I cover about half the distance. And it steps out in front of my car. And then that's when I realize it's on four legs. And I live in the southwest corner of Virginia. I see deer all the time. We don't make deer this big. I seriously thought it was a person at first because it was looking down into my car, and I drive an SUV. Mm-hmm. So I'm 6'2", and it was at least as tall as I am. And so it steps out in front of my car, and that's when I realized it's on four legs. And the road that I was parked on, it crossed it in one step, stepped across the ditch in one step, and was up a 30-foot embankment in another step and was gone.
No, those are fresh.
Did they ever go bad?
I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, so that was my most recent experience. And the thing I remember the most about it was how helpless I felt. There was, I mean, I could feel that, you know, it wasn't trying to be seen. I don't know. It just, I felt like I was in the wrong place, you know. But I used to run there every morning, and I haven't been back before or after sunset. Or I mean, before sunrise or after sunset to that spot. And I don't plan to.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of like podcasts that cover, you know, strange topics, and that's something that comes up a lot. Seeing like these kind of like Bigfoot, dogmen type creatures really break people because they just feel so helpless. Something so massive in front of them. But also, you said I'm familiar with skinwalkers, but do you know what crawlers are exactly? I feel like I've heard that term, but I'm not quite sure what it is.
A crawl. Do you know what a rake is?
Yeah, something like that.
They're similar, I guess. I don't know. I've always believed in Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really believed in crawlers, you know, until that happened, and now I guess I do believe in crawlers because I saw one. Yeah, but it was wild. It was wild. I immediately stopped, you know, because I wasn't just gonna run right up to my car because that's where it just was, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just stopped in the road, and I called my mom because I didn't know what to do, and she said that when she picked up the phone, I was crying. You know, it was a really, really wild experience.
Oh, I'm sure I
I'll ever forget.
haven't had any yet, but I kind of want to going out looking for these things. I just hope I'm prepared when I do.
Yeah.
But there's a YouTube channel I follow called the Lower Lodge who did a breakdown into like the Wendigo history, and I think he was saying that if you look through the actual history and lore, they sound similar, more like to the rake, very pale skin, you know, long nails, you know, no lips, so that you see the teeth very prominent. So I think maybe that could be some of the sightings.
That up here, because I live in Appalachia, you know, that if you say that word in front of somebody, you know, you don't say that in front of somebody.
Wendigo?
People get get really, really weird when you start talking about that. And it's one of those things that it's like the stories I've always heard is that once you hear it, you know, you're dead, because it's after you at that point. It's picked you, and that it wants you at that point. And that it uses deception, and it sounds like it's coming from one way so that you run the opposite direction, but really that's where it's at. It's tricking you to run towards it, you know.
I have heard something similar, that if it sounds close to you, it's actually farther away, and the farther away it sounds, the closer it is to you. That's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But, the crawler was definitely... It was probably the scariest experience I've ever had. I saw Bigfoot a long time ago. I was probably 8, you know? And it's one of the few memories I have from being 8, you know? That's how long it stuck with me. I was in northern Mississippi, and it was kind of the same feeling of being completely helpless, you know. But I was in northern Mississippi, and I was on my grandparents' property, and they have a large area of property, but past that, the land is owned by a logging company, you know, a timber company. So those trees there, for acres and acres and acres, will sit untouched for years, you know.
Yeah, until they're ready.
And so, until they're ready to be cut. And so that's part of the thought process I have, is to thinking that, like, you know, maybe that's where Bigfoot was hanging out, or this Sasquatch, you know, because it understood that, you know, he's going to be okay here, because they don't lease that out to hunt, you know. That's that's their property and everything. I don't know, but I was with a dog, and I was walking around the corner of the house, and it was probably from, I would say, 10, 15 yards away was the tree line. And I remember that when I turned the corner, the dog stopped. And all of its hair went up, its ears perked up, everything. The dog was on edge. I stopped and I looked at the dog, confused, because we were just walking around the house. And I looked at the trees where it was looking, and I looked back down at the dog, and I looked back up at the trees. And I remember seeing, it was like a hole in the trees where like light was shining through, like a hole in the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably about 7 or 8 feet off the ground. And in one really slow motion, it was almost like time stopped. And it walked right through the hole in the trees. Black fur and everything. I didn't see like its whole silhouette, but it was 8 feet off the ground, 7, 8 feet off the ground, and walked right through that hole in the trees, and the dog took off after it, and I took off running the opposite direction. And it was once again one of those situations where I just felt completely helpless. And the dog came back probably about 3 or 4 hours later, and it was completely unharmed, but that's probably the closest thing I've had to the crawler experience.
Interesting. Do you have like any crazy theories about what the Bigfoot are?
I think that there's a lot of them. I think that I don't think they're necessarily just an ape in the woods, a big ape. I think that there's a level of supernaturalness that goes with it, because, I get that there's a lot of things that we haven't discovered yet, but I also feel like there's some sort of level of spiritualness that's also how they manage to avoid getting seen, I don't know, it's kind of almost like the crawler maybe, that
Mm-hmm.
there's a good portion of the time that maybe it's not in this physical realm. I don't know.
Yeah, shout out to Tony Moko at the confessionals. Going down that rabbit hole, he has people on that talk about how they may be the offspring of the Nephilim, the angel-human hybrids from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that would explain some of like the supernatural aspects of, the time dilation, walking behind trees and just disappearing with no trace, no footsteps, no sounds. But also, yeah. I do think, maybe there could be some just big apes out there. Who knows? I don't think it's one answer. I think Bigfoot's kind of like a catch-22 in the sense that a lot of things can be classified in the cryptid genre.
Yeah. It wasn't shortly after the Bigfoot, but it was in between the Bigfoot and the crawler. I saw the what they referred to as the Appalachia Black Panther.
That's something I wanted to ask you about too.
Yeah. What would you want to say?
Well, I was gonna say again on Tony Moko. He talked about how he heard this sheriff caught it on his dash cam, but then I think he said he talked to like the game warden, and this was in Tennessee. And he said don't show that to anybody. And I'm just curious, why do you think they're covering it up if they're all Black Panthers?
Because I don't know, it's another one of those things that, it's just like, I don't know why they necessarily wanted to cover it up. I think it's another one of the things that, it's one of those things that you don't talk about, around here. That when you talk about it, things start happening, I don't mind talking about it, but I saw it on it was a dirt road, long dirt road going up to a mountain. It was Tumbling Creek is the name of the creek I was on. And we were going up to Laurel Bed Lake. And it was running across the road when we came around the corner, and it was much bigger than a mountain lion. You know, it set probably 4 foot off the ground, and its tail, it honestly looked just like a jaguar, really. You know, I didn't get to see its head. I know everyone talks about how it's got the pointed ears and everything, but it looked a lot like a jaguar. And it cleared an 8-foot fence that we were pulling up towards, I guess, what was the game warden's, you know, building where they kept the boats and whatnot and everything. But there was a corner fence that was at the edge of the property, and it was 8 foot tall, and it cleared it straight over top of it, and was gone into the woods farther than I could see in a matter of seconds.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that something that big could be out there and nobody talks about it. Nobody warns people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like no, what are you gonna say?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because I follow kind of loosely like the 411, and I don't think there's any one answer to anything. You know, if you overlap missing people with like cave systems, they could just fall in, never be found. It also brings up the question, like, what's living in those caves. You know, the Black Panthers, Bigfoots, Dogmen.
Yeah.
And to get into the alien conspiracy, because you brought up saying that you saw UFO, that the government said that they can take people from like the national parks and stuff. So that's lots of things go down in national parks.
Yeah, lots do. And I mean, it's just kind of like if there was a place that supernatural stuff could happen, you know, it's like the melting pot for it. You know, and my most recent UFO sightings were right outside my house. Little tiny dots, like little bitty dots in the sky. If they weren't moving, I would think that they were stars. There was like a clump of them, and individually they all kind of moved to a center point, and then went off in like a Nike swoosh type deal, and then faded away. And then the next one would get in line behind it and do it. The next one would get in line behind it and do it. The next one would get in line behind and do it. And I mean, it went on long enough that I was able to call my friend that lives a couple houses down, and he walked up the road to the field beside my house to watch it there with us. You know, it went on for several minutes. There was also one UFO I saw at, and this was also in northern Mississippi, at a hunting camp that was out in the middle of the woods. Long dirt road to get to it. It was dusk. It was, I don't know, maybe 8:30 or so. The sun had set, but it wasn't dark yet. And there was 3 lights in a triangle that was pretty much sitting still. But when we were riding on a 4-wheeler, me and my father were, and I say it was pretty much sitting still as I couldn't see it move, but it seemed like it kept relative location to us. You know, like if it was, I don't know how far away it was, but for example, if it was 5 miles away, as we got farther away on the 4-wheeler, it still seemed like it was 5 miles away, you know? And so it never seemed like it moved, but it seemed like it kept its location compared to where we were at.
Do you think it's coincidence, or somehow like keep an eye on you guys to see where you went, what you would do?
I don't know. Maybe. We were the only ones out there at the time. I mean, for miles, we were the only ones out there. And so I don't know that it was watching us, or if it was just, you know, there, and that's how big it was, that it seemed like it was always in the same spot. You know, if looking at the sun now and drive 30 miles down the interstate, the sun kind of looks like it was still in the same spot, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know that if the UFO was just that big, or if it was, you know, much closer to the ground and was there following us. I couldn't hear it, you know? So I don't know. and all I could see was the three lights. I couldn't see the shape or anything else, or if there was more past the lights. So I don't know how big it was, but I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, that's something I have heard when people talk about like UFOs or like thunderbirds or other flying creatures, that it's hard to gauge when they're in the sky because there's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was no clouds in the sky, no nothing.
Do you think there are fake clouds? Or do you believe in like the creatures living up in the high altitudes?
Yes, absolutely.
Like that movie Nope. I've heard a few stories that are kind of interesting. Man,
How's it going?
pretty good. Thank you for having another chat with me. I feel bad just kind of leaving it where it's off. The other video, it feels unfinished.
Absolutely.
It's weird how it cut off right at the UFO stuff. I think you had just told the ones that did the Nike sign and the one that seemed like it didn't move no matter how far away you got. But I think you had the Tic Tac one left.
Mm-hmm.
Or was that part of the other ones?
No, that was a separate occurrence, and that also happened very near my house. And like I said in the previous call, I don't remember how long it stayed in the air, but I know that it wasn't more than a few minutes or so, or a few seconds or so, because I was driving by on a bus.
Yeah, you sent me the video. It kind of flies by pretty fast.
Yeah.
And I want to say I brought up last time about fake clouds, but I didn't finish my thought. I have ADD, so I kind of jump around. But do you think they use fake clouds to cloak some of these UFOs?
I'm sure that it's possible, you know. I've never heard of anybody that had any sort of encounter with that, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Yeah, you would imagine some kind of cloaking tech to go unseen. But also, I want to say we brought up like sky creatures. Do you believe that there are things up there?
Yeah. I've never had any sort of encounter or know of anybody that's had any sort of encounter, but I'm sure that, you know, I don't know. I would like to think that there's something up there.
Because I've heard two different thoughts that they're just essentially like Earth-created creatures. Like I brought up last time, like above and below. To study the deep sea, you might be able to understand like the greater things, the micro and the macro and the micro. But also people bring up these UFOs that look very biological, like octopus or squid-like things with like tentacles. And I think that's kind of fascinating too, because it does tie into some old accounts of like meat and slime and blood rain, just stuff falling from the sky, and that would explain it. If something dies up there and it falls, it's gonna get like shredded just from the air.
Yeah.
And rewatching the video, going back to like the crawler, you said it was on all fours while it was bent down looking into the truck, or it took off on all fours but it was standing?
It's weird because it took off on all fours, but when I first saw it as I was coming up that hill, it appeared to be on two legs.
On two legs, okay. No, go ahead.
It's hard to explain because it never, like I never saw it turn or anything, right? So it looked like the sideways silhouette of a person, looking down into my car. And then as I was getting closer to it, I could tell that it had moved towards me, almost sideways maybe. And once it was in front of my car, it moved, and like, I don't know if more of it just happened to show up behind it or where the back two legs came from, but initially I seriously thought that it was a human, and then it had 4 legs.
So, but yeah, getting back on the subject, because I was listening and it reminded me something about the Wendigo, that certain lore about it is that they get bigger the last time they ate relative to the last time they ate. So for it to be over like 6 foot to bend down, I was thinking it had to be massive. If it was still on 4s and having to bend down. But if it's standing on 2 legs, then it doesn't have to be so big. But over 6 foot is still pretty big.
And that's the funny thing about it is, though, because I've thought about that too, that maybe it was on 2 legs and then bent down to 4 legs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But the process of standing beside my car and then stepping in front of it, it never got shorter, you know? So, I don't know.
Yeah, it still would be terrifying to see.
Yeah.
And what else did we talk about? I think we got into like theories about like the state parks, because I think that ties into some of like the missing 401, to tie it all back together, because you have the possible Bigfoot encounters that turn deadly, maybe like Dogman, some kind of ray crawler Wendigo thing. You have possible just falling into caves. Do you believe that like portals could just open up and swallow people?
Yeah. I've read stories about like people disappearing right in front of other people, and people watching people just fall through the earth and whatnot. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I don't know that it's portals per se or what could explain that, but I would agree that there is something like that to explain that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if you want to call it a portal or what you would like to call it, but
yeah, because I want to say, and maybe the part that got cut off, I had brought up like ley lines. So if you are layering stuff on top of each other, like going from 3D to 4D, 5D, dimensions, and it's all laid on top, and it's collapsing and reforming like a tesseract, then I would think there are moments where certain things could touch and let go, and you can kind of be stuck on either side maybe. And that's something in like the 411 where they turn around and the dude's just gone, and it's like you just saw him like a minute ago and it's just gone.
Yeah.
I think that's a possibility, that the more ley lines, the more powerful it could be. And I think with the earth being a lot of quartz and crystals could explain some of that pent up power and energy it builds up. Because that's one thing people bring up about like the pyramids, about how it's the power source, that something about like the granite there has the quartz, can help build up the energy. So I think there's a lot of stuff we don't know about the earth.
Oh, for sure.
We really don't know how things operate. We think we do. Trying to think what else we brought up. That was about it.
Yeah, as far as the UFOs go, I believe that was about the gist of it.
Do you have any other comments on some of the stuff we talked about that you can remember?
Do you think that there's like, I hear a lot of people talk about Bigfoot just as an example of Bigfoot, or really anything, but everyone's got some sort of a different description of it, right? And so, do you think, if you put 2 humans beside one another and you ask a different species, what's the species, they probably wouldn't classify us as the same thing because me and my neighbor, we don't look anything alike.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's multiple, possibly hundreds different species of Bigfoot or whatnot, or do you think that it's just, the species itself can look that completely different, that vast?
I would think it depends on what rabbit hole you go down, because if you're going through the offspring of Nephilim, then yeah, I would imagine you could have different species, subspecies, because they're all different ones that are like smaller, more like 4 foot, um, and then you have like the classic big ones that are like 7 to 12. But also, if it's biological, then it would make sense there are some variations, because I think the skunk ape looks more like an orangutan, whereas some of the other ones they have more of a gorilla or chimp looking face. But I've had some people bring up that to kind of close the gap between Bigfoot and Dogman, what if there's some that have more of a like baboon, more of a snout to them, like a baboon, and same with like Dogman. Some of them say there's hyena-looking ones, some that look like German shepherds, some like Rottweilers. So I definitely think there could be some variation and how the facial features are. But I guess to explain that, it just depends on the rabbit hole you go down. Are they just big apes, or are there something more to them, more supernatural? Because if they are um, kind of with the Nephilim idea, like if they're all interdimensional in a sense, that they could project into all reality any way they want. So that could also explain the different variations. And some people I've heard on podcasts bring up like the different colors they have that could be explained on age. Maybe when they're younger, they're more
Mhm.
brown or reddish. Then you get to the browns and the blacks, and then you have the stories of like the white or silver looking ones. That could indicate like how old they are. They just went, gray haired like we would. It's very interesting. Some of the rabbit holes you can go down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's all the really the extra comments I have.
Okay, because I think we only lost out on like about 20 to 25 minutes. I think we're about 20 minutes now. Um, but yeah, thank you. Then, if that's all, thank you for coming back to help kind of finish and
Absolutely.
close up any loose ends. Because going back, there was a few things where I was like, oh, I forgot to mention this and that. But I think by
Yeah.
now I've kind of forgot some of them. But the big one was the koala idea. Because when I got to think about it, if it was on Fools, then have you seen A Quiet Place?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's been a minute, but I have seen it.
I got to thinking something like that, to the arms would have to be longer if it's on four, but still kind of had to bend down. So I was like, that seems not right, you know.
Yeah.
But if it's on two legs, then it makes sense a little bit more that it's more humanoid. But yeah, recordings. But yeah, thank you. If you have anyone else that has stories, let me know. I'm
I
trying to
will.
find as many people as I can talk to. Do you have last comments? I don't think last time you really had anything to kind of shout out as social media
Mhm.
wise.
No, I don't have any social media.
Do you want to mention your name one last time?
My name's Sam Pierce.
And I'm Alex Myers. Thank you for enjoying this episode of the Oddball Odyssey. Thank you.